Hello there and welcome to my overview of Warhammer 40,000 Combat Patrol Premium Set 2. Now I've got to say I'm quite excited about this set as we're getting a Demon Prince for our Chaos and we're getting 5 Howling Banshees for our Eldari. So as well as the magazine, obviously you get all the sprues you need. You get 3 sprues for the Howling Banshees and 3 sprues for the Demon Prince plus all the bases. And as tradition dictates with our Combat Patrol magazine, the very first thing that happens when we open our magazine is we get our How to Build section. First of all, by the look of things, we're building our Howling Banshees, so we'll crack on with those in a moment. The Howling Banshees aren't difficult really to put together, and they are very, very lovely models. I've already got some, to be honest, for my Eldari. And I've wanted a Demon Prince for quite some time, so this is very, very handy. I think there's a couple of options as well, so you can sort of have him look a little bit different than he is in the book. So these are all pretty easy to build, however there are a couple of issues. I noticed when it comes to the Demon Prince, there's a couple of sections that are actually completely wrong. Okay, so the error comes early on. It wants you to add an arm where it doesn't need to be, because you need to add this arm, which is the sword arm. So when it comes to this section, make sure you only put in 31. Don't add that second arm, or you're going to have to try and pry it off, like I did, because of course I was following the steps, expecting them to go perfectly well, but it didn't. And yeah, bit of a nightmare to try and remove, but got it in the end and got the model sorted. And of course, because I'm an absolute muppet, I forgot to film them before I started to spray them. I sprayed them with 2 different colours. I'll go into that more in a second as we go through the paint guide. But here they are, both sets of models are absolutely fantastic. Really can't wait to get stuck into the Demon Prince. Completely forgot what it was then. So after the build, we go straight on to the painting, and the first thing we're going to be looking at to do is the Howling Banshees. Now, these premium ones cover all the steps, so it'll be base coats, shading, and the highlights all in one. You won't have all these paints unless you're like me, who's got a vast collection of these paints. Anyway, if you're a beginner and you just started with this magazine, take your time with them. You've got plenty of time. As the paints just drip in, just remember to sort of update these guys. Now, as you saw earlier as well, I sprayed my Howling Banshees white. They want theirs to be Wraithbone, but I'm not hand undercoating. I'm never hand undercoating it because it takes too long, to be honest. So what I'm going to use, I'm going to use some Skeleton Horde, and I'm going to paint the entirety of the model's armor with that. Now, Skeleton Horde is a contrast paint, so it's pretty much a one-coat paint. It deals with the shading and a little bit of the highlighting. We are still going to do the highlighting on it, though, because it helps it stand out more. But the armor will be done nice and fast and quick, and they'll look just as good as if we painted them the way they're recommended. For these guys, I'm not actually going to sort of talk about any techniques or anything like that throughout this video. I've actually recorded 2 paint guides, so if you want to see those and sort of get a quick look at how I finish these off. And it is basically just following the guide mostly, but you'll have a visual representation. You don't have any or most of these paints at the moment anyway, so you won't be able to sort of get fully up to speed. You will have to wait, unfortunately, to get the rest of the paints. That said, they are quite enjoyable to paint. So you'll get to see the finished result in a moment, but next up on the painting list is the Demon Prince. Once again, there's the full guide on how to paint, including the layers. And again, we don't have all the paints, unless you're like me and you're already collecting them, so you'll have to take your time with this one, and you'll have to come back to him in the future. I've got to say, he's quite a lot of fun to paint, and once again, there's also going to be a paint guide for him as well, because I thought I might as well. I'm going to spend like an entire day painting this guy. I might as well sort out a paint guide as well. He's very easy to paint. He's very simple. The main problem is just because of the bulk of him, you've got so many different sort of areas to paint and so much to do. But again, it's all good fun. And again, if you make mistakes or you forget a section, it's very easy just to go back and sort those sections out. Probably the most trickiest part of him is the runes on his sword, but that'll be perfectly fine as long as you just take your time. There we are, that's those guys done. I'm very happy with the way they've come out. Definitely also happier with the fact that I decided to fully paint these this time, rather than what I did with the Dreadnought and the Hive Tyrant. I fully painted the Hive Tyrant because I've got a different colour scheme for my NIDs, but the Dreadnought, I'm painting that alongside the Space Marine, so it's going to take a lot longer to get them done. However, fully painting these guys didn't take too long whatsoever, round about only sort of between 4 hours for the Demon Prince and about 5 hours for the Howling Banshees. However, they are quite a lot of fun to paint. Moving on, we've got some lovely artwork for Eldari. And then we've got a little bit of information about the Demon Prince, followed by its all-important datasheet. We've got 2 datasheets, one for Chaos Undivided, and the other for the World Eaters, which are Khorne. Following this, we've then got a little bit of information about the Howling Banshees, and once again, we've got our table for naming them and our datasheet. Next up, we've got the Dark Coronation mission, which pits our Eldari versus our Chaos forces in an attempt to stop the Chaos Demon Prince from rising. By the look of things, we'll still be using our 2 battle mats, but I've put down some scenery to add a little bit of cover and to change things up a bit so it's not just a direct fight. So our Chaos forces consist of a Dark Apostle, 10 Chaos Legionnaires, 5 Chaos Havocs, a brand new Chaos Hellbrute, and of course our extra brand new Demon Prince. However, he won't be starting on the battlefield as he'll be arriving using the Dark Apostle. And facing them are the Eldari, starting with our Eldari Farseer, followed by 10 Guardians plus their weapons platform, 6 Wind Riders, 1 Mighty Wraithlord, and of course our brand new Howling Banshees. The mission rule says that the Eldari are the attackers, so they're the ones that are going to get deployed first. So after both armies have been deployed in their respective deployment zones, it was down to the dice roll, and the Eldari gets to go first with a 4 against the Chaos 3. However, it's not just about killing that Demon Prince, it's also about the objective markers, so naturally the Eldari are going to move forward with every single unit moving forward, starting with the Wraithlord. The Guardians are also going to move up, but they're not going to move up too far. They're going to still stay as far away from the enemy as possible, as they're not that great in combat. Wind Riders then head straight up the flank as the Howling Banshees move straight towards the Legionnaires. With all the movement out of the way, it was on to the shooting phase. So, starting with the Wraithlord, he's going to fire his Bright Lance into the Hellbrute. He managed to hit and wound the giant War Machine, however, unfortunately for the War Machine, he failed his save, meaning that he took 5 points of damage from the Bright Lance. The Guardians then decided to follow suit and use the Star Cannon to fire at the Hellbrute, along with the Shuriken Catapults firing at the Havocs. Unfortunately for the Guardians, though, while managing to hit the Hellbrute, he actually failed to cause any damage. Guardians, on the other hand, had a little bit more luck, shooting at the Havocs, managing to cause 1 wound. The Howling Banshees then opened up with their Shuriken pistols into the Legionnaires, but thanks to some absolutely dreadful dice rolling, they only managed to cause 1 wound, and then that was saved for the Legionnaire. The Wind Riders then decided to also shoot at the Legionnaires with their Shuriken catapults, however, they only managed to kill 1 and remove a wound from another. It was then time for the Scatter Lasers, and despite rolling quite well with lots of hits and lots of wounds, they only managed to actually eliminate 1 of the Legionnaires. Onto the first combat phase of the game. Of course, the Wraithlord happily made it towards the Hellbrute. Now, the Howling Banshees also made their target, meeting up with the Legionnaires. So starting with the Wraithlord, he used his strike rather than his sweep to take on the Hellbrute, and with 3 successful hits and 3 successful wounds and no saves from the Hellbrute, the Wraithlord managed to cause a huge 14 points of damage. Guess that was revenge for the last time these two engaged in combat, where the Hellbrute just absolutely stomped on the Wraithlord. Next, it was the Howling Banshees' turn to strike, and the Exarch was going to use their mirrored swords. However, even with 4 attacks and the anti-infantry special of 3 plus they only managed to actually take out one Marine. The rest of the unit then struck, however, their dice rolls weren't that good, and they only resulted in taking out another one of the Chaos Legionnaires. It was in the turn of the Legionnaires, so they moved in with a 3-inch pile-in move, and the champion, using his accursed weapon, managed to take out one of the Howling Banshees with absolute ease. Moving on to the rest of the unit, there's 3 of them there that have chainsaws and bolt pistols, meaning they get 4 attacks in combat, which I didn't actually realise, I completely forgot about. So these Howling Banshees got an absolute drubbing as these Legionnaires just absolutely wrecked them. You could say mistakes were made. So with both armies, both losing 1 unit each, we go into the first turn for Chaos. During the movement phase, the Legionnaires are actually going to move a little bit closer to that objective marker, even though it is quite tempting to rush in there and absolutely crush those 6 Wind Riders. The objective marker at the end of the day is the most important thing. On the other side of the battlefield, the Dark Apostle is going to move up closer towards the Guardians in hopes that he can charge them very, very soon. And sticking with him in the shooting phase, he used his bolt pistol to take on the Guardians, but despite getting hit and to wound, he failed to cause any damage. So instead we go across to the Legionnaires. Now, they're going to fire naturally at the Wind Riders, and the first things they're going to fire are those 3 bolt pistols. Only one, however, hits, and that one managed to wound, to which the Wind Rider actually promptly failed his save. Next for the unit is that one lone bolt gunner. He promptly then only hit with 1 shot, and that one he failed to do any damage with. Moving on to the heavy bolter, he also managed to score 3 hits, and he got a 6, and he's got sustained hits, meaning he gets an extra roll to wound. But with that roll, he only managed to actually cause 2 wounds. But sadly for him, both of them were saved. Finally, the plasma pistol with the Legionnaires took his shot. He managed to hit, he wounded, and this time the Eldar had run out of luck, and we lost another Wind Rider. Lastly, to shoot are the Havocs. Now we're going to start things off with the las cannon, as we're going to take full aim at that huge Wraithlord that's bearing down on them. And of course, despite managing to cause a hit, he actually completely failed to cause any wounds. As the las cannon failed, the missile launcher stepped up, firing a crack missile which managed to hit and successfully wound. The Wraithlord failed his save, and he took 6 points of damage as a result. This is a scary boy as well, and we really do need to get him off the board. The rest of the Havocs are also going to concentrate on him. The heavy bolter managing to hit with 2, but failing to cause any wounds. The chain gun also opened fire, firing 8 shots into him, hitting with most, and by some sheer luck managed to cause 1 wound. That was promptly saved. So the champion finally stepped up to the plate using his plasma gun. He managed to hit, which he managed to wound, and unfortunately for the Wraithlord failed his save, adding another 2 more wounds, bringing him up to 8 in total. The Dark Apostle decided to change tactics, as that Wraithlord is still a huge threat being on the battlefield, so instead of charging the Guardians, he charged him instead. Then his 2 little acolytes took swings at the Wraithlord but failed to cause any wounds. And with the Dark Apostle managing to hit with all 5 of his attacks, and needing 6s to wound, he managed to scrape in there with 2 wounds. Each of these attacks do 2 damage each, so if they're failed by the Wraithlord, then the Wraithlord is done. However, much to my surprise, I managed to roll a double 1, meaning that Wraithlord is out of here. As turn 2 begins for the Eldaria, it doesn't look like they're in a very favourable position at the moment, especially for capturing any objective markers. It's from here we'll actually start adding victory points. You get 5 for each objective marker you control. And with that in mind, the Guardians and the Farseer move closer to the second objective marker. On the other side of the battlefield, the Wind Riders continue their way up the flank, as they don't really particularly want to get into combat with those Legionnaires, so they're going to try and dislodge them first. For the shooting phase, the Guardians decide to fire at the Dark Apostle, and that resulted in eliminating his little disciples and giving him 2 wounds. The Guardians not want to give up the ghost. They also fired their star cannon at him, which managed to hit with both shots, wound with both, and unfortunately for the Dark Apostle, he managed to fail one of his saving throws. So in this very bloody battle, that's another unit removed off the board. As psychic abilities are now in the shooting phase, the Farseer fired his Eldritch Storm at the Havocs. He managed to get off 4 shots. 3 out of the 4 shots managed to hit, only 2 of them managed to wound, and 1 save was failed, resulting in 3 wounds for the already wounded Heavy Bolter. The Wild Riders then opened up onto the remaining Legionnaires, starting with their Shuriken Catapults. However, they only managed to cause 1 wound, resulting in the already wounded Legionnaire being removed. The Scatter Lasers then opened fire, both are still on the battlefield and with an impressive amount of hits, but a terrible amount of wounds. It only resulted in the death of 1 Legionnaire and wounding another. It's looking a lot better for Chaos than it is the Eldari at the moment, with Chaos having their paws on 2 different objective markers, but we needed to make a Battle Shock test for the Legionnaires. Unfortunately for them, even though their leadership is only 6+, they managed to roll well underneath them. This means that the only unit scoring any points for Chaos at the moment are the Havocs. With those 5 points in the bag, the Legionnaires are just going to scooch up a little bit in an attempt to take on the Wind Riders. They don't really want to lose the objective marker, even though they could probably just charge in there and smash their faces in. And of course the Havocs aren't going anywhere either. So in the shooting phase, both Legionnaires with bolt pistols opened up on the Wind Riders. 1 managed to hit, but he failed to cause any wounds. The Heavy Bolter then fired, only hitting with 2, only wounding with 1, and that wound was then saved. So all that was left to fire is the Aspiring Champion with his Plasma Pistol. He managed to hit, managed to wound, but unfortunately once again the Eldari managed to save. The Havocs then let loose at the Guardians with the chain gun firing first with its mighty 8 shots. It managed to hit with pretty much all of them, but unfortunately it barely managed to make any wounds. And those wounds were then subsequently saved. Missile Launcher then thought he could do better, firing a frag missile, getting 5 shots off, only hitting with 4, only wounding with 3, and 2 of those wounds were saved. However, that is the first Guardian out of the unit down. Next, the Aspiring Champion with his Plasma Gun then fired. He managed to score a hit, score a wound, and that took another Guardian off the field. The last cannon then chose to fire at the Wind Riders. He managed to score 1 hit and 1 wound, and he removed 1 from the battlefield. So that's the Wind Riders, now down to 4. So as turn 3 begins, the Eldari are looking like they're in a lot stronger of a position than they were in the last turn. This is mostly due to the fact they have their hands on one of the all-important objective markers, meaning they score themselves 5 victory points. The Wind Riders are going to push up, getting as close as they can to the Havocs. This way, they're going to concentrate their fire alongside the Guardians, all on that Havoc unit, to try and get them off that objective. Now, the Guardians, meanwhile, are perfectly happy where they are. In the shooting phase, the Wind Riders opened up onto the Havocs with their Shuriken Catapults, managing to cause 1 wound. Scatter Lasers also wanted to get in on that action, however, despite having loads more shots, they only actually managed to do 1 more wound, taking their already wounded Havoc off the battlefield. So as the Havoc's numbers dwindle, the plan seems to be going quite well. The Guardians are now going to have their shots with their Shuriken Catapults. Once again, get a high number of hits, but however, on the wound front, they managed to only score 1, and that was promptly saved. However, now the notorious Marine Killer of the Star Cannon also opened up, and wounding with both, managing to take out 2 more Havocs. All that was left for the Eldar is for the Farseer to use his Eldritch Storm, to which he got a whopping 6 hits. However, out of those 6 hits, he only managed to hit with 2, wound with 1, but that was enough, and he caused 2 points of damage, killing that last Havoc. So at the beginning of turn 3, it's not looking good for Chaos, but however, there is something rumbling and arriving on the battlefield, and that is the Demon Prince. According to the rules, the Demon Prince is set up in the middle of the battlefield, 1 inch away from any enemy. And of course we need to give our Legionnaires a battle shock test. This time they managed to pass, but barely, meaning that they gain another 5 victory points. So for the movement, the Legionnaires are just going to slightly shuffle about, making sure they're close enough to take on the Wind Riders in a moment. And of course the Demon Prince is going to get as close as he can to the Guardians. In the shooting phase, starting with the 2 bolt pistols, they open fire and they manage to hit with 1, wound with 1, and that one also failed their save, meaning we've finally wounded another Wind Rider. The heavy bolter then took his shots, hitting with 3, wounding with all 3. However, the Eldari managed to save all but 1. It does, however, take another Wind Rider off the board. Finally, the Aspiring Champion and the Plasma Pistol take their shot. And the Legionnaires seem to be on a roll as he managed to hit, wound, and the Wind Riders failed their save, taking out another one. The Demon Prince then decided to fire with his Infernal Cannon. All 3 hits hit, and all 3 of them managed to wound as well. As his cannon is only -1 AP, he only managed to take out 2 of the Guardians. Onto the combat phase, and the Legionnaires made their charge, and the Demon Prince managing to make it with no problem. So starting with the accursed weapon in the hands of the Legionnaire's Aspiring Champion, he managed to hit with all 4 of his attacks. He also managed to wound with all 4 as well, and the failed armor saves meant that the Wind Riders lost 1 and the other one received a wound. Combining all the attacks from what was left over with the Legionnaires, they just absolutely stomped on that poor Wind Rider. And with his last gasp, that's the Wind Riders wiped out, with the Legionnaires consolidating 3 inches closer to their objective. Next, it's the show we've all been waiting for. It's the Demon Prince, and he's got a huge 14 attacks with his sweep, so that's exactly what we're going to be using. However, I've only got 12 dice, I'll be re-rolling that one twice, as I managed to roll another one with it immediately, meaning he succeeded in hitting with 13 of his attacks. However, he didn't quite wound with all 13 attacks, he only managed to wound with 11. On the sweep though, there's no minus AP, so the Eldar did get their save, but he still managed to take out 5. As those Eldari and the Farseer pile in, it doesn't look really good for them, does it? But the Guardian gave it his all. He managed to hit. He also managed to wound, but that was just completely shrugged off by the Demon Prince. Now that Farseer is not built for combat in any way, shape or form, as he managed to hit with both, but failed to wound. It's really not looking good for the Eldari on this, let's face it, final turn. As both units have an OC of 2, that actually means that this objective marker is contested, so no points for anyone. And straight into combat, the Guardian puts up a good fight but fails to cause a wound. And the Farseer, perhaps foreseeing his death, also managed to hit with both but fail to wound. It's all finished but the crying as the Demon Prince winds up for another gigantic sweep, because why not? It's absolutely hilarious. Once again, getting 13 hits. And managing to succeed in getting 12 wounds. Which there was a grot's chance in hell that the Eldari was going to win. So that's both Eldari and the entire Eldari army being completely wiped off the board. However, it's still a lot closer than it seems, as it was only 10-5 in favour of the Chaos. Sadly though, it'll probably be the last time we see the Demon Prince and the Howling Banshees in battle for a while. And with that, that's the end of the second premium set for the Combat Patrol magazine. And I've got to say, it's an absolute blast. Love these guys. I definitely used those Howling Banshees wrong, but lessons learned. I'll use them properly in the next game. Now, Demon Prince, though, he's an absolute beast, and I absolutely love him. I can't wait to get him on the battlefield more often. Well, if you enjoyed the video and you want to see more, we're covering all of the Combat Patrol videos, and we'll keep doing these videos for as long as the magazine runs. And if you want to see all that, give the channel a subscribe, the video a like, and leave a comment about which one you're more excited about. And I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye for now.